As the tape began, they heard the voices of two men working urgently together, two men who had very suddenly found themselves in a crucible, fighting not only for the lives of their passengers and crew, but for their own. And with increasing frequency and a rising cacophony of sound, they heard every alarm, alert, warning, continuous repetitive chime, and computerized synthetic voice sounding in the cockpit. Ground proximity warning system alerts, enhanced ground proximity warning system alerts, traffic collision avoidance system alerts. And finally that voice urgently saying, terrain, terrain, too low, terrain, too low, gear, too low, flaps, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, until it suddenly stopped at the end of the recording. The six in that room were thunderstruck by what they had just heard, by the suddenness, the severity, the intensity of this 208-second long event. They sat there in stunned silence until finally one of the six said, "That guy has been training for this his entire life." Well, he was almost right. But I believe the preparation had begun even before. You see, all four of my grandparents were born in the 19th century, and yet all four attended university. Remarkable, especially for women of the era. My mother was a first-grade teacher for 25 years in the small Texas town where I grew up. My father, a professional. And so I received from them wonderful gifts, a lifelong love of reading, of learning. So I had the good fortune to grow up in a safe, stable environment in which education was valued, ideas were important, and striving for excellence was expected. And so I've tried to do in my life what I've encouraged others to do, to never stop investing in yourselves, to never stop learning, never stop growing, either professionally or personally. I think that's become an economic necessity for us now. As the pace of change globally only accelerates, most of us cannot get through an entire working lifetime with only a single skill set. Instead, we have to keep on learning, growing, stretching ourselves, sometimes reinventing ourselves. I've had to. And we must learn how to innovate. My favorite definition of innovation is actually a very simple one. It is to change before you're forced to, by competition, by regulation, or by circumstance. And the more and quicker that you're able to change, the more it can become a competitive advantage. The better you're able to turn adversity into opportunity. And that's true whether you're facing a sudden crisis or a sudden possibility. My parents also were of what we consider now to be the greatest generation, I think with good reason. They grew up during the last great financial upheaval, the Great Depression of the 30s. My father served in World War II, like many of his contemporaries. And they had certain clearly articulated values they passed on to me and that my wife, Laura, and I have passed on to now our adult daughters. A sense of civic duty, of service above self, and a willingness to share our society's sacrifices. Yes, all of them, even the really inconvenient ones. Now, sometimes, given all the many distractions in our modern popular culture, it seems as though these important civic virtues have gotten lost in the noise. They don't seem as apparent as they once did. We may wonder if they still exist, but they do. And not only did I learn them from my grandparents and my parents, but I began to learn them in earnest through direct object lessons the very first day I began basic training at the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1969. On that first day, it was obvious to us that we had encountered a system designed to change us, to challenge us, to tear us away from the comfortable, the easy, the familiar, to teach us civic virtues that, quite frankly, many in our society seem to feel they have the luxury of thinking of only as abstractions. But I'm here to tell you that I've learned in my life they are not abstractions. They are, in fact, values that have real meaning in real life with real consequences. It matters what we do and how we do it. in spite of how it seems often in this winner-take-all world, there really are things that we owe to each other as citizens. We owe it to each other to be capable of independent critical thought, to make decisions based on facts, not fears. And one of the things of which I'm most proud is that my wife, Lori, and I have raised two smart, strong, dedicated women who have integrity and compassion and empathy to take out into the world with them. We've seen recently what happens if we don't.